The higher course, chapter 18, deals with basic trigonometry in 2 dimensions and a grade A, an A star, 3 dimensions. Now there is no shortcut to this. You've got to learn the 3 formulae, the 3 rules of trigonometry that we have to use. As you can see, I've got a lovely Casio up here, and this is the latest model, I believe. There's a lot of kids have got these even now as we speak. So this is the one you want, and let me introduce the topic first of all. Trigonometry works if you have a right angled triangle. Okay, certainly the trigonometry that we're dealing with in chapter 18, always right angled triangles. Supposing we have an angle x degrees here, as follows. Now, if we cite that as an angle that we're working with, the side opposite the angle over here is actually called the opposite side. And op is the accepted shorthand for that. And here we have the right angle, 90 degrees, and on this side we have the line or the side next to the angle, and of course the word next to is translated as adjacent. Well, it's synonymous with adjacent, next to, and adj is the acceptable shorthand for that. Now that leaves with this remaining longest side, which is always opposite the right angle, as you can see. That's called the hypotenuse. Probably some funky Greek roots there, I don't know what it means. Anyway, hypotenuse, longest side. Opposite, well, it's opposite the angle. Adjacent side is next to the angle. Right, that's that. Now clearly, if we change the height or the opposite length, say to up here, can you see that the angle will actually get bigger as we change the opposite length, bigger or smaller? If we reduce the opposite side down to say this size here, smaller size, then the angle will get smaller. So clearly there is a relationship between the 3 sides and the size of the angle that we're working with. And obviously once we know that angle, we can work out the missing angle up there as well. But just recognize that as we change any one of these lengths, the angle will change. Remember, you must maintain the right angle, otherwise the mathematics won't work. So here are 3 rules then, which you simply have to learn. Now, the sine of the angle, SIN for short, the sine of the angle x degrees is defined as the opposite side divided by the op over hyp, isn't it? I was going on to tangent. Anyway, opposite over hypotenuse. Oh, by the way, of course, the shorthand is hyp. Right, so the sine of the angle is the opposite length over the hyp length. Then what the calculator can do is, if we use the sine function here, it can actually calculate the angle for us. So we've got to use that rule. The next rule is cosine, cos for short. The cosine of the angle we're talking about is the adjacent side divided by the longest side, the hyp. And therefore, if we knew the adjacent length and the longest side, the hypotenuse length, and divided them, we end up with a fraction of some sort, decimal, then we can ask the calculator what the angle is. It's really easy. And finally, the tangent of the angle, or tan for short. So the tangent of mystery angle x is going to be the opposite side divided by the adjacent side. Now, some people make up all sorts of little rhymes or mnemonics to remember these formulas. Just remember them. Make a little rhyme, you know, sine equals op over hyp, cos equals adj over hyp, tan equals op over adj. And if you just learn it one way or the other, you've got to get them into your head, because these will not be given to you on the first page of any exam paper. They used to be back in the day, ages ago, but now you've got to learn these. There's no 2 ways about that. So don't get lazy, otherwise you will fail in this topic, and I can't tolerate that. So there we go for 3 rules: sine, cos, tan, sine, cosine, tangent of the particular angle that we're positioned with. Of course, just to make this a little less clearer, if I was working with this angle here, maybe angle y degrees, the opposite side is no longer there. The opposite side to y is of course this side over here, which is called adj at the moment, but really y's opposite is over here, and y's adjacent, then the line or side next to y, is just here. So this would be his adjacent, and that will be his, y's opposite. But let's not get too bound up by that just yet. Let's get rid of that, because I don't want you to focus on that at all. Alright, okay. That's the introduction done. Now sometimes we can work out the angle, other times you're given an angle and one of the sides, and you can rearrange it just to find the other mystery side. Now look, these are all formulae involving just three parts: sine, op, hype. Speed equals distance over time. You can all rearrange speed equals distance over time. Therefore, there's no reason why you can't rearrange sine, op, and hype, cos, adj, and hype, tan, op, and adj. There's no reason at all. It's only got three ingredients in this recipe. Alright, now I want to focus your brain over these calculator functions. So here I've got the sine button, and directly above it I have the sine minus 1 button. Very, very hard to see. So I've got the sine button, and I've got the sine minus 1 button. Now that is accessed by pressing shift first. Alright, so if you go shift and then sine minus 1, that is a function that we use in order to get the angle given. Once we've calculated the op over the hype, we end up with a decimal, 0.73 whatever, and then we go shift sine, and then this minus 1 function is accessed. Basically, there's nothing mysterious about that little bit of writing above the sine button. It's just that if every single one of these functions on the calculator had its own button, the calculator would no longer be portable. It would be a much bigger thing with everything having its own set of buttons. It will be 3 times as long, 3 times as wide. So it's not like they can't afford to put a button there. It's just that there's a different way of accessing the sine minus 1 function. So you press shift and then the sine button, and then you're going to get sine minus 1, which is the way of asking for the calculator to give you the angle once you know the sine. In the same way, you press the cosine button of the angle. In order to access the function above the cosine, which is cos minus 1, you need to press shift, and the shift button is usually up here somewhere on most calculators, and then cosine, and that will give you the minus 1 of it. So essentially, if I know what the cosine of an angle is, because I've divided two numbers, the adj and the height, I can press shift cos and I will get cos minus 1. So let's make this a little clearer. I don't know how I've done the arrows. If I press shift and sine, I will get the sine minus 1. If I press shift and cos, I will get the cos minus 1 function. In other words, it will work out the angle for me. In the same way, I can press the tangent button to find out the tangent of an angle, or if I know what the tangent is, because I've divided the opposite and the adjacent lengths, there's only two numbers anyway, divide them, and then I go shift tan, so I should write it down, shift and tan, I will actually get the angle itself. Alright, so let's put some arrows there. So shift and tan, that gives me the tan minus 1 function, which is the inverse function of tan, cos minus 1, the inverse function of cos, sine minus 1, the inverse function of sine. Again, this will become a lot clearer once I do some real live examples, but this is all about introducing the three rules: the sine, cosine and tangent, showing you where these buttons are on the calculator. Of course, let's just put a little box around the tangent and tan minus 1 functions. So these three buttons serve as sine, cos, tan. They also serve as shift sine, shift cos and shift tan. So these three buttons actually perform 6 functions. They each provide 2 functions. Provided you hit the shift button first, then you can get the sine minus 1, cos minus 1, tan minus 1 function. Alright, so a bit mysterious. Learn that, and learn what buttons to press in a minute once we do some real problems. So I'm going to stop there, study those rules, learn them, get to know how to use shift and when to use the actual sine, cos and tan buttons themselves, and that'll be great. Then you'll be fine. And then it's a question of seeing what rule is required for what question. Remember, you've got to learn these. You won't be given them. There's no shortcut to this. You've got to learn them in the same way you know Pythagoras' theorem, in the same way that you know the area of a triangle is half base times height, in the same way that you know the circumference of a circle is 2 times pi times r. Area of a circle, pi r squared. No shortcuts, just learn them, and then trigonometry will be fun and easy. Alright, so I'll stop for now. That's the first introduction done.